Well, Kenny Omega's interview with Renee Paquette this week on the Sessions podcast was very newsworthy. Lots of big stories coming out of this podcast. A fantastic interview. Nobody does interviews quite like Renee. Renee is amazing. I think she's one of the biggest wrestling podcasts out there, too. And for good reason. She's insanely good at what she does. She's one in a million talent. You know, she's got that personality that she's fantastic. You know what I mean? Does great work, has a beautiful conversation with Kenny that's really in the format of just shooting the shit, just hanging out, having a good old conversation. They got into the All Out Brawl Out. I did do a clip on that earlier in the show. If you're listening to the whole show, you already caught that. If you're just checking out the clips, go check out that clip. I'll put it as the end cap. What to watch next, I'll put that one up there for you so you don't have to go looking for it. It'll be there for you, waiting at the end of this one. And Kenny even talked a little bit of WWE, you know, the rumors that he's going to be going to WWE, which I addressed in that clip as well. But it was in this clip right here that you came to see, that you clicked on. Kenny Omega gives his thoughts on that goddamn barbed wire deathmatch debacle. That thing was terrible. I talk about the Brawl Out being something that hurt AEW. That match really hurt AEW at the time, too. Now, they bounced back from it. I think people forgot about it fairly quickly. I think even now, if you were bringing it up, you know, when you saw this thumbnail, you're like, oh, yeah, that happened. You know, oh, yeah, I remember that. But what a fucking mess that was when that happened, right? How embarrassing. That was the worst. Like, those explosions were so powder puff, so weak. So, like, even the ones that did work, they were clearly fireworks, you know? It just didn't look good. But don't take my word for it. What did the guy in the ring think? What did Kenny Omega think? What was going through his mind going into the barbed wire death match with Jon Moxley? And what were his thoughts when the exploding barbed wire death match did not explode and nobody died? Check out this clip.
But what's an instance of something not working out the way that you thought that it was going to?
The big one that always comes to mind, the forefront of my brain is, of course, the barbed wire death match, the exploding barbed wire death match. It was again,
great match. By the way,
I was so proud of the match. I was so worried about the match because I'm not really a hardcore guy, and I'm like a guy that's scared of needles. I'm a guy that's scared of getting cut.
Yeah.
When I'm in the heat of the moment, things happen, so I just deal with it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So when I'm getting thrown on the barbed wire and things like that, in the heat of the moment, sure, I can handle it. But no, going into a match knowing that this might happen and this might happen and this might happen, and I'm thinking worst case scenarios, like, wow, I could catch on fire, I could sear, my face off,
Yes.
or whatever. I could get completely shredded by barbed wire if I get completely tangled in it. Like, I was scared of stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
But the one thing that I never thought would happen, and I should have considered it, was what if all this stuff that they've prepared, that they have done rehearsals for, that I know worked in rehearsals, what if for some reason on the day of, that doesn't work? It never popped into my mind. That feeling, that thought, because you just think that the stuff that you can't control is going to be there for you. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you're worried about your match. You're worried about your moments.
Yeah.
It's like what control.
I'm trying to worry about, like, what can I do to control the unknown? But the thing I can't control, any sort of technical aspect of the match, I can't do that. So I'm just trusting that all these people that have the know-how and that have been tasked to do this can pull it off. And
what was going through your mind during that moment when you're like waiting? Like, what happens as like a performer in that moment of like, oh shit?
So I was giving the entire situation the benefit of the doubt because it was a super windy day.
Yeah.
It was a very windy day, and the way that the wind traveled through that kind of half open air arena, I thought maybe this place has been so wind tunneled up that something had caused this to not fire the way that it should.
Mm-hmm.
And I was kind of hoping that maybe that's what it was. But it was just like, when I heard the real reason, where it was like the boss who was not there for rehearsals had then showed up to the actual real life show, and he had said, I've got a way to make this look even better.
Oh,
And
shit.
that was his idea. Couldn't believe it. I was like, wait, you decided on the spot when you didn't know the idea. You didn't see the rehearsal. And that's the direction he decided to go in. And yes, there were misfires within his new idea that he decided.
Yeah.
But I wish we just would have done what we practiced, you know?
So how do you react in a moment
Mhm.
like that when things don't go as planned? What do you do when you walk to the back? Are you mad? Are you kind of trying to understand it? How do you function in that moment? Did you get pissed? You look like you got pissed.
So
I would have been irate, dude. Whoever was in charge of that, and Kenny hinted that it might have been Tony Khan's fault. He said the person that added something at the end, we all said that we didn't think that was a good idea, but he said it was going to happen anyway, and he was the final word. Who's the final word at AEW? Tony Khan. So maybe Tony added something to this match that made it stupider. I don't know. It looked like a normal exploding barbed wire death match. You know, like the big boom at the end. Maybe that was his idea to recreate the thing, with the covering where Eddie came down and covered Mox. But it was what it was. Shit happens. They did a rehearsal and everything went off fine. I don't know what else you could have done to prep. You know what I mean? If it was tested beforehand, then you gotta put your faith in God to a certain extent. But I get where Kenny's coming from. It's gonna be hard for him to put his trust in that process again, for him to rely on gimmicks and things to happen in the match. He seemed very pissed off about it. He seemed very disenchanted altogether with AEW. He sounds about done with it, to be 100% honest with you. I think he's going to WWE. That's what I think. I think Kenny Omega is out ski as soon as he gets the chance. I think that's probably why Tony locked him up for another 9 months to make up for, because they had the option to pick up the months that Kenny was off. You know, you don't get to sign a contract for 2 years, 3 years, and then sit almost an entire year off at home. Granted, you're doing recovery and all that, but I hired you to be on TV for 3 years, not sit on your couch for a year. So I get it. I get that. But I think that's an ominous sign. I think that's a sign of Tony, exercising his right to hold on to Kenny. I think shows that Kenny is leaning towards wanting to leave. So I think that sounds to be where it's heading. He sounded very frustrated in this interview. Unhappy with being an EVP. Unhappy with maybe not having the kind of control that he thought he would. Unhappy with things like that. Like he had to put in there that somebody else added something to this match that made it not work out. And Renee was very good about kind of changing the subject there, kind of taking Kenny in a different direction, where Kenny was going to probably continue further with that. But I get the frustration in the match, man. It was a cool match. It was a cool concept. And look, I remember, and I talked about it on this show, like I was going to watch that. My kid does not like wrestling. But he likes cool shit, just like anybody else likes cool shit. So when I tell him, like, hey, I know you don't like wrestling, but these guys are going to wrestle in a ring wrapped in barbed wire, and it's going to fucking explode at the end. Want to watch? And then I had to just hide myself in shame, because he's looking at it like, what is this shit that you're trying to show me, basically? You know what I mean? So big old botch, big old turd dropped in the middle of the ring. But I thought you might like to hear Kenny Omega's thoughts on that because, I don't know, kind of shit's interesting, right? But I do 100% think he's on his way out the door. But what are your thoughts? Do you think he's on his way out the door? You think he's done with AEW? Or do you think he's just kind of trolling around, wearing the Sami Zayn shirt? Is that just kind of a troll? Or what's going on there, really? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. Highly recommend you check out this interview, by the way. I put that down in the description, the link to the full interview with Renee. It's very good interview. Probably the best Kenny Omega interview I've heard. So worth your time. Go check it out. I'm going to go ahead and move on to the next. Hey, thanks for checking out that clip. Don't forget to check out other clips here on the channel. And while you're there, throw a like, throw a subscribe. And don't forget to check out full episodes each and every Sunday of the Pro Wrestling Podcast.